Good
Hello.
evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Coffee Busters of Politics. Since my shock defection to the Green Party, which we're not going to talk about today, the rumours that we're going to change this to vegan soy latte, electric buses, and gender politics are not true yet. We need to have a little talk behind the scenes. So it's still Coffee Busters of Politics.
And the furthest I can do, Stephen, is a coconut flat white. The vegan soy latte is a step too far, I'm afraid.
So I'm sure a man who's never had a coconut flat white in his life. We're joined today by a man of the north. I'm sure you must be a Yorkshire tea drinker, Darren. I'll be very, very disappointed if you're not.
To be fair, I'm going to disappoint you, Steve, because Yorkshire tea is too strong for me. Honestly, I can't take it. Too strong for me.
You have Lancashire tea.
Yeah, I declared that live on air, didn't I?
Yeah. So we are joined by Darren Roe, very kindly again, who's joined us, who's Stagecoach's managing director. And what he's agreed to do is open himself up to any questions we might get from the audience or by panel members. It's been an interesting few weeks for Stagecoach, hasn't it, Darren? Because there's been talk of strikes recently. Where are we currently in with the strike situation, as much as you can say?
Yeah, sure. So I'd probably give you a bit of context where we are with this. Would that help a little bit, do you think? Yeah. So
yeah, yes, please. Yeah.
Look, we came off the back of a 2-year pay deal in October. So we started talks just back into September, September 2025, and we had 3 depots that all the pay talks are aligned. So we had Cambridge, we had Peterborough, and we had Fenstanton. Okay, all separate bargaining units. But in reality, Cambridge and Fenstanton, because the terms are exactly the same, irrespective of whether you work at Cambridge or work at your Fen, we join them pay talks together. Peterborough slightly different because they're on slightly different pay rates, a few different terms and conditions. So effectively, I started talking pay in September with the union, and how it works is you get a pay request from the union, so that's what kicks off the discussion. A pay claim, that's what they call it. They send a pay claim from Unite, and it's about 7 pages long, and it takes you everything through why they think they should get X amount of pay award, what they want to have a look on holidays, what they want to do in terms of special rates and things like that. So we set up a meeting in September, and then we go through that pay claim, and then obviously I put the company's position forward in terms of where we are financially, and then we start effectively talking. What we all decided was, following the previous pay claim, which got really protracted. I mean, we started talks in September, and previous to that, we'd finish in like January, February, and I think everybody would just ground down, So the learnings from the last pay talks were, can we have a simple figure? Can we keep it nice and easy? Get straight to the point. Let's not drag it out. Let's go to where we need to be. The challenge with that is, obviously, when you've got a pay claim for Unite, and that pay claim was 9.8%. So to give you a rough idea, I costed that out at 7 million. To give you a better idea, I only made 4 million profit last year. So already, we were certainly going to be behind the curve. But look, I'm all for a high anchoring. I absolutely get it. I absolutely get that. So we were talking with the unions, and we were talking about, right, okay, what's your thoughts on these last views? Let's get it in fairly early so we can get it in from October. Let's keep it nice and simple. What can you do? So there's always a little bit of worry when you're doing stuff like that, because you think, right, okay, because I know what my number is, I know what's in my budget, I know what I've accounted for, and what I was really worried about, the classic, you always reject the first offer, right? And I didn't want to put an offer forward and then start negotiating from there. If you want my best offer, I can give you my best offer, and that's what the union asked for. And I basically given my best offer the first week in October. And that was the 4% that I put on the table on all elements of pay. And then what I did, I said, let's put another 2 year together. So we had 4% on year one. And then I said, I'll put a 3% on year two. Looking at the pay claim, you wanted to do something with holidays. So we recognised additional holidays for those with service levels. And we said, if you've got X amount of service from year one, then we'll give you extra holidays. And then for the second year of the deal, we'll allow more holidays if you've got a lesser year service. And I think it was in year one, anybody with 10 years service could go up to 25 days, and then anybody from 22, and then year two was anybody got 8 years service can go to 25. It was something like that. Dead simple, 4% year one, 3% year two. And frustratingly, Unite didn't put that to the members. They went straight to an industrial action ballot, which they put forward in back end of October, something like that. And that got a resounding like 80-90% in favour of industrial action. So the pay talk started back end of October. Fenstanton and Cambridge came, and we started talking about, right, okay, so what we can do. I don't want to strike. To be fair, I don't think they wanted a strike. So what can we do? And when you're talking pay, there's kind of like a number of principles that you've got to work on, right? Okay, first of all, it's got to be affordable. Yeah. Secondly, it's not going to stop us in a few years' time with growth and not having the ability to grow the business. Yeah. We've got to make sure that we protect the lowest pay. Yeah. And we've got to make sure that we still the best paid in the region, because I want to make sure we're always at the top of that pay scale, because it helps with recruitment and selection. And there's a myth that employers want to try and get away with as little as they possibly can. That is an absolute myth. You've got to try and balance your pay to make sure you're in the market, and we're constantly stress testing ourselves of where we are in the local market, not just bus drivers, anybody that drives a big vehicle. So, if you're into your trucks, your LGV class 2, the rigid 17, 18 ton type vehicles, we're always stress testing ourselves beyond that market. So effectively,
sorry, Darren, I think it'd be useful to have some context, because you say about obviously the importance of having, obviously being competitive. And so I wonder how it compares currently with other operators, and how do you feel you're positioned in the market?
Yeah, great question, Alex. Look, I know if you want to drive buses in Cambridge, we have the best package, not only in terms of the pay rate, in terms of the hourly rate, but also in terms of the average earnings, because we pay enhanced rates if you want to work over your 40 hours or whatever it is, duty pay. So if, for example, anything over 40 hours, if you work on a Saturday or a Sunday over your 4 hours, you're on time, you earn time and a half, which is like £24 an hour or something like that. Anything Monday, Friday, you're at a time and a quarter. So anything over your 40 hours, you're on the enhanced rates of pay, which obviously puts up your potential average earnings. So, and as well as the pensions, as well as the sickness, uniforms, and all the other sort of things, which you would expect from a big company like Stagecoach. So I knew we were already at the top of the market, because we do as homework before we start going into pay talks, And one thing I always do before I go into pay talks is I'll go to the union. I'll even we have an intranet site, and I'll say, look, if you've got any job adverts or intelligence where you think we're off the market, bring that to the pay talks. So when you sat in front of me, you can say, there's a job advert for a bus driver from X. That's what they're paying. That's what they're doing. Because you need that information on the table. So when you're talking about pay, you're talking about real life examples, So effectively, we've got a number of options. You've always got about 3 or 4 levers that you can pull in terms of trying to open up the pie, in terms of, right, okay, so how do we get more than 4%? And effectively, there were 3 key levers to look at. One of them was longer term deal. If it's a longer term deal, that helps me a little bit, because then I can plan ahead. I'm into the next financial year, so I know what my costs are going to be. If I'm tendering for services, I've got some security because I know what my labour costs are going to be, because about You know, in terms of our costs, 70% of our costs are labour, so it's a big chunk. You know, we've then got we've got overtime. So we've got these overtime rates. So you might want to think about taking a little bit off of that overtime and putting it on your base rate, because not everybody wants to work overtime. And we had a good discussion about the overtime is only as and when required. So when we're really good for staff, we don't need as much overtime. But then when we're really short of staff, we need overtime. And at the moment, we're in a good place with staff. So overtime's coming down. So it makes sense to try and load that base pay. And then the other opportunity is, as you're ticking away through the negotiations, you've got back pay. So the deal should have been in from the 1st of October. We're now in terms of October. Do you take an element of that back pay again to put it on your base pay? And those are the discussions that we started having. We came up with a deal that took effectively those 3 elements of pay, put it forward to the team. Peterborough accepted the deal, Fenstanton accepted the deal, but Cambridge rejected it. So we implemented the deal for Cambridge and Peterborough, and they went, "Did you like that, Steve?" I saw the balloons going up.
What happened there? Is it
Well,
a reaction?
he's also on mute.
I want to put this one, but on the screen, but I don't think I pressed the balloons myself.
Brilliant. So by that time, we got Cambridge and Peterborough that had accepted the deal. Cambridge didn't. So I decided to call in ACAS. So we had another couple of sessions with ACAS. And ACAS, just out of interest, because to be quite honest, it's the first time that I've ever dealt with ACAS. And effectively, you're in one room. So me and my colleagues are in one room. You've got the union in the other room, and effectively the facilitators moving from one room to another, trying to broker a deal. That's kind of how it works in terms of ACAS.
Can I just put something to you just quickly? Because the reason this question came up was because Stephen had an advanced question from somebody. And
yeah.
One of the comments it starts with is that Stagecoach reported a substantial profit of over 72 million. I just want to go back, and because you talked about 7 million, is this a difference between net and gross, or is this about national versus local?
This is national versus local. Okay. So effectively, I meet with the union 4 or 5 times a year, and we share our profit costs, we share our revenue, we share our passengers. You know, I'll do a whole, we'll have an all afternoon together sharing our numbers with the local union representatives and the full-time officer from Unite. And throughout those 4 or 5 sessions that we have a year, we only talk about Stagecoach East's financial numbers. Yeah, we have our own statutory account. Our business is called Cambus. That's our official title. Our Stagecoach East is a trading name. So we only talk about Cambus and Stagecoach East. What Unite are doing there, playing a bit of the rhetoric, they're obviously quoting the Stagecoach group numbers. But we are our own profit and loss centre, like many other companies that have multiple sites across the UK. So I think that's where those numbers are coming from.
Okay.
So we'd had a couple of sessions, 2 or 3 sessions with Unite. One of the big challenges that we had was we got this entrenched position by the local Cambridge branch of £17 an hour by, I think it was January the 1st. And I just simply couldn't afford it. And so that's when they started with the industrial action that you've seen over the past few days and weeks. We came to a point with Unite where we both agreed that pay talks were concluded, and there's a magic form of words that you have to come up with to both agree with that, and that term is exhausted. So in a meeting with Unite and myself, we both agreed that you're entrenched that position. I've given you the best offer from the end of September. That's 4%. That's effectively where we were. And pay talks had finished. That then means I've kind of like 3 options that as a business, I can do. One of those options is not to offer a pay award. Didn't think that were a particularly good idea to do that. The other one is where we could offer a direct award. So I could write to Alex, I could write to Stephen, I could say, right, there's the offer. You can take it, you can't take it. Have it if you want it. Didn't really like that. I thought that would be really divisive. So I wasn't particularly keen on that. So effectively what I did was I implemented the 4% from the 28th of December. And that kind of brings us where we are up today. I had a talk with the union last week, and the union have gone, so they suspended the strikes. Well, last week in January, they had 3 days on the bounce. They've been doing a Saturday here and a Monday there. And it really ramped up last week when it's 3 days, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So they asked me if I would meet with them and talk with them, and I obviously said I would, and they agreed to suspend them strikes. So we had a talk on Wednesday, and the union are going to go back to the members to see if they want to continue industrial action, and that's literally where I am right here, right now. I'm waiting for a phone call from the full-time officer, hopefully next week, to tell us where we are.
Okay, so I was just going through some of the questions. They're more position points rather than questions. One about the fencing that's being put up, which I presume is referencing the fencing along the busway.
Yeah. I can just briefly to comment on this one, because I know Matthew and Mark and others have been commenting on the topic. So the safety works, and I would be interested to hear Darren's view and take on it and the impact on services. But the safety works, which include installing the 16 miles fencing and also flood mitigation work will take place. The safety works are actually legally required because the county council had a £6 million fine after the tragic death of the to comply with the Health and Safety at Work Act as well. There's actually legal obligation on some of those works, so it's not like we can just take the money and put it somewhere else. There's the ask me isn't it better spent on X or Y? You can't really take out the budget for that.
I understand the issues around the fencing and everything else, and I went into it because I was obviously around when the guided bus was eventually delivered, and I say eventually, it was a long story, but the thing that I always go back to with the guided bus is, yes, there were people going on the guided bus and sadly, walking on there and sadly losing their lives and whatever. But I go back to railways, and you look at how railways operate. And although there are fences along all of those, or along the railway lines, they're certainly not everywhere. And I'm just wondering why the guided bus has to be different, and pretty much have fencing all the way along the route.
So, great question. Are you okay with finishing off on the strikes? Because I know it's been really, really emotive, and apologies to all the passengers and all stuff like that. Are you happy that we've moved on from there? There's no other questions that you want to ask me on?
Somebody needs to tell Stephen to turn his mic on.
Yeah, we might take some other comments later, but let's move on.
Okay.
To suggest there's a few on the busway, so
okay,
all right. To clarify the legal requirements as well on this, because I get so many questions. And I say from a county council perspective, we actually have to do those works because the council actually admitted fault on this.
Yeah. Great question about the legality and why because obviously we operate bus services, cars drive along down roads that are 50, 60 mile an hour with pedestrian walkways just to the left or to the right of them. So the challenge with the busway is the legislation that it's been built under, and it's actually under workplace legislation. Normally, it would be highways. Yeah, it would be highways, or it would be, to your point, it might be rail. I don't know what the rail legislation is, but I guess there'll be some legislation about running rail. So the challenge with the busway, and don't ask me how it's got to this, but it was built under the workplace legislation. And the bar set for health and safety is much higher in terms of health and safety rather than highways. That's why, if you're involved in a particular incident on highways, and unfortunately there's a serious incident or a serious accident, the police will turn up, and they'll deal with it, and they will deal it with through their enforcement legislation. Doesn't apply on the busway. It's all down to workplace, and workplace fire places a higher bar in terms of where we are, and the bar is to remove the risk. Hence the reason why they're going to have. They've gone down the segregation. They've gone down the segregation piece. So it is under different legislation. The busway.
Is it one issue that most railways don't have what is essentially a pedestrian and cyclist track along one side of it? Because there's a question here which basically says that cycleway and pedestrian way, which is fantastic and actually is a benefit of the busway, was rather an unintended benefit, because when it was designed, which was before I think all of our times, it was really there as a maintenance track, and that was kind of added in afterwards as a way. And again, it's a fantastic feature, but has that played into it?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's just something popped up on my screen here for a guy called Mark. It was designed as a maintenance track, which is quite right. It was designed as a maintenance track, and it's since been adopted for cycling
that's not entirely true. It was designed as a maintenance track, but always had cycling in mind as well.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I know, because we were, it was always intended that way. I remember some of the fights we had with the constructor over the maintenance track when one of the things was they denied that it flooded, and so we sent one of our councillors, who was the appropriate cabinet member at the time. We sent him cycling through the floodwater and sent a photograph to the press.
It still does, but there will be some flood mitigation county council works as well on that track soon, probably after the fencing.
But with regard to safety, I remember when back in the days when I used to cycle, we're talking about maybe 8-9 years ago, and I started using that that cycle track as a training route, and it's fantastic. But also at that stage, the buses were going at 30 miles an hour. And I was aware of how unusual we are at seeing buses travelling that quickly, because you are quite close to it, and the buses were going quite quickly at that stage. And it looks like it's a safe environment, but clearly there have been issues because lots of people have been hurt and killed, which is tragic. So the buses have been slowed down since then, haven't they, Darren? They're not going at 30 anymore.
Yeah. So as a result of the health and safety executive taking action against the county council. And I know the health and safety executive have been putting under county under significant pressure to do something, and as with the health and safety executive, they don't tell you what to do. They just say you've got to do something, and you hope that what you're going to do would mitigate some of the risk and give you time to do what you want to do, and those plans involve putting up the fencing. But to try and mitigate the risk following the big fine that they got, quite rightly, they had to do something immediately, which was reduce the speed limit. So the challenge that we had was, the busway was doing really, really well. We were absolutely smashing it in terms of the number of people we were carrying. We were virtually back up to where we were pre-COVID. And just a little bit of history, we were about to put £5 million worth of extra vehicles on the busway in March 2020, just as Boris said, stay at home. We got them all parked up. I got them new triaxles that you see out there. They were about to hit the service. We got 5 extra single deckers. So we got what was that? Just under 20 vehicles that we were about to do to enhance the service every 5 minutes, and spent all the money, got the buses all liveried up, ready to rock and roll, and then Boris would stay at home, and everybody did, right? and we'd worked hard to get the busway back up to where it was, and we were doing really, really well. We were showing year on year growth. We were introducing additional services. We're starting to up the frequency as it came in. We were working a lot closer with local schools and colleges, trying to get ahead of the curve in September. So we were talking to them in April and May. What's your intake like coming on your students? Because we were finding September had come, and all of a sudden these people and students would come out of the woodwork, and we'd be thinking, where did these people come from? And you were finding there were a much stronger cohort that had left school and gone into schools and colleges. So we were talking to them much, much earlier to try and get ahead of the curve to make sure we got the service. So we got extra vehicles in there. We were running duplicated services, and obviously when they put the speed limit in, all those had to be pulled to keep the frequency up. No longer could we run extra vehicles, and also it just killed the journey time, man. When what used to be, we were struggling going through town, but I think it took what used to be a 50-minute journey to over an hour and a 20. It was just crazy, and it just kills the service. So where we are right here, right now, 20% passenger drop. Look, the challenge comes when you hit that amount of revenue loss and that amount of passenger drift. The normal response would be, look, if we've taken a 20% passenger drop, you've got to take the resource out to get it back to at least it can wipe its face, And the challenge that we had was we'd still some strong demand on the biomedical campus, and you don't want to burn all your passengers off. There were those that have found alternative routes. Absolutely get that, But at some point, this will end,
Yeah.
And you just want to make it. So it's just about holding on, right?
It's about how you encourage people to go back once, hopefully. Like I see the southern section is planned for early summer. Then, of course, you have to work on the northern section, but we're looking at the year of work. So that's the question is like how long people are waiting until they are not, because if people start buying cars and so on, there'll be a point.
Can I double check that is the plan? Once we finish, once all the fencing is done and dusted, the speed limit will go up again.
Well, certainly that's what we want to do.
Yeah, that's the intention from what I understand.
Why would you build a fence, right?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, this was designed as a rapid transit system.
Yeah.
To get into the city as quickly as you possibly can, and then get across the city and then up to the biocamp. So where we are right now, and I've got a team on with the county every 2 weeks, and then I meet with the senior team from county and some representatives from the bio every 4 weeks, just trying to some extent, find out where we are we on target, how we're hitting those expectations. I'm being told that May 26th for the southern section to be completed, but I'm talking spring 27 for the whole of the northern. That's a long drag, man. That's a long drag, and then spring 27, as soon as the people hit the last fence post and put the last slat in, I'm saying it ain't going to bounce back straight away. We've got to grow it again.
But will you work in advance of that date, of that opening date, to actually start to advertise it and start to make sure people are aware?
No, I'm not going to bother with that. I'm not going to bother with it.
Well, no, I mean, the reason I'm asking the question is it's something before your time I have been very critical of Stagecoach about, which is the fact that they don't seem to advertise the routes well enough. And I remember asking a previous MD when the last time was, he put a leaflet through a door telling people when the buses were running, and he couldn't answer. And so it is sort of relevant, because unless that sort of activity is going on in a way that somebody like me who is interested is going to notice, sure as damn it, Joe Public's not going to notice.
Okay, so a couple of points there. I have a brilliant marketing team. What we do target marketing now. You could spend a fortune telling everybody when really what you want to do is talk about those people that are likely to use it. So we use all sorts of BT mobility data. So all your phones are tracking. We get that tracking data, so we know where the phones are going. We've got something called mosaic data, which is all about population densities and those people more likely to use bus services and all that sort of stuff. So we use all that intelligence that we can to drive customer growth. But the big thing that worries me about September 27, that's when the fare cap ends.
Yeah.
So that's the big challenge for us. Is at the moment, the DfT and Treasury is saying that's it. March 27, that's the subsidy gone for all the buses. You go back to your commercial fares, which by 27 won't be £3.
I have to say, unless there's a dramatic change in the way politics works in the UK, the fare cap is not going to end in September 27. One of the things about politics, modern politics, is that governments can do things like that, implement them temporarily, and they become impossible to get rid of. And I would be, unless there is a dramatic change, I would say the fare cap is not going to end.
Just putting on this on the screen now, which is around actually from YouTube, saying about the impact of the local fare cap going to £3. Do we know actually what is the overall impact on the service bills?
Yeah. So look, and I guess we see it first when people say cost of living and all that sort of thing. We see it first, right? So when so the combined authority subsidised fares from the £2 when it was £2. Then the subsidised it to £2.50 when it was £3. Yeah, and now obviously that subsidy's gone. Our Bedford operation, went straight from £2 to £3. Yeah. And we saw 10% passenger drift. And that is not unusual across. When I speak to my MD colleagues, because we share all that information, that is not unusual that passenger drift hits when it goes to £3. And the challenge that I've got is 90% of my customers are hooked on the £3. It's dead easy. It's dead simple. I just pay the £3. The challenge that we've got is that may not be the best value ticket. Yeah, there are cheaper tickets available, but people have just got into this £3. And what we've done is we spoke to customers. We do a lot of targeted marketing about trying to get them off, the hook on these single tickets, but they just get used to £3, and somehow before we get to this fare cap, we've got to pull them back in because there are much better value tickets available, and despite us doing everything that we possibly can, it's simple, and we could have a whole debate of whether we think bus fares are expensive or not, and I will definitely probably have a different view to a lot of others. I think it's dirt cheap, £3. Tell me what you can get.
I think Alex and I, a while ago now, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, took some buses around, and I was struck. That was the time we were talking about a congestion charge in Cambridge of being £5 a day, and I was struck by just how good value bus fares are. But like you say, it comes down to habit, doesn't it? And people have an expectation set, and then if you're set at £2 or £3 and it goes up by £1, that's a massive percentage increase.
Yeah,
probably close to that.
It's 50%, isn't it? But can I just have you looked at alternative schemes like an Oyster scheme or something like that?
Yeah. So the challenge with the Oyster is the back office costs. They're pretty huge. How do you manage it? Who controls it? What's all the work that goes into it? So it's kind of like the Tigers, and we may come on to talk about Tigers. There are some real upfront costs in terms of how you manage it, who produces it, what's the tech behind it, and when you're in the volumes that London are, that's easy to do, When you're in little old Cambridge, then all of a sudden they become a big proportion of the costs, But just going on, just 30 seconds on fares, if we can. My cheapest day ticket in the town, if you buy a Flexi 10, which lasts a whole year, so you pay for it, it lasts you a whole year, 10 rides, £4.55 a day, unlimited travel from first bus to last. And my challenge is, how do I get the message compared to what? Well, you can't go into Costa and buy a mocha latte, whatever it is, then go to the next one up the high street and buy another one and it'd be free. You can only have one value meal from Tesco's. You can't have several where you can use the bus several times. Do you know what I mean? So it's always that compared to what? And it's a real big challenge I have when trying to justify
This is related to that, Darren, which is this point here. That's great when you're talking about Stagecoach services, but sometimes you're talking about more than one operator. And
sure.
I mean, there is a flip side to that, of course. Which is that people like me have been banging on for ages about monopolies and stuff around Cambridgeshire, and having more than one operator around means that we don't have a monopoly, but or quite the same monopoly. But I just thought I'd flag that up because that is a point.
Yeah, there is a multi-operator ticket that we are that I think we offer. Don't ask me the value of it because I must admit I've no idea. But there is a multi-operator ticket available. But again, I wouldn't be able to comment on the price because, to be quite honest, I've not got it off the top of my head.
Is it time to go back to what Terry is saying here in the comments? I don't remember this time when I started using the buses, but what was it? Does anyone know?
I can't remember.
What was that story?
And I'm old.
Yeah, so Terry's saying like there used to be a Stagecoach Smart card years
ago.
They
did. Yeah.
By the customer.
Yeah. And again, what we found was people weren't using it. Smart card is old tech now. You really just want to be getting on. You want to be paying with your phone. We want to be using tap on, tap off. Just like in London, right? I did 11 years in London. What a place to go if you want to run buses. Absolutely brilliant. Tap on, tap off. People don't care. They just flash the phone, because they've got confidence in the system that they will never pay more than they need to. And that's kind of where we need to get in terms of rolling that technology out to all our regions as well. Because we know once people get confident in terms of that technology and that confident that you're never going to pay more, then you're always going to get the best value.
Isn't there a benefit with those schemes to the operators, though, in that by front loading them, effectively you are, that's cash in the bank for you, and in terms of cash flow, that's that must be a godsend if you can make something like that work.
So there's a couple of things here. Is the fact that it depends on so cashless transactions are great if you can catch fraud quickly enough.
Okay.
Yeah. So don't assume that every customer that boards our buses is paying with a kosher card, and you have to make sure that you're buying the best level of software that's going to block that card as soon as quickly, because if not, the customer's boarded, the customer's travelled, there's definitely things. So I did one of the strike days, I did a Trumpington, right? I did a stint on the Trumpington. I drove the Trumpington. So Christmas Eve, it was bloody busy, I'll tell you, right? And there were 3 or 4 customers got on and they tried to pay with several different cards. So the flash a card, that didn't work. Machine goes red. The flash another card, that didn't work. That didn't work. You know what I mean? So it's about having the tech behind it that stops that fraud. And if you're in London, they have the best tech. They have the highest level of fraud detection because obviously on the number of passengers that they're running, it can soon make your numbers go south.
Do we have the ability to tap on and tap off? Isn't tapping off a big part of this?
Yes, it will. That will come, Stephen. Unfortunately, at the moment, you need the back office and the tech and the ticket machines to do that as well. And at the moment, certainly in Stagecoach, until we get our new ticketing solution, which I believe is coming in about 12, 18 months, something like that, and then we'll be able to do all that sort of stuff.
There's lots of comments that I'm trying to see what we have.
How about this one as well, Darren? So, are you still doing any shifts on the bus? Last time I talked to you, you were still driving buses sometimes. Do you ever drive a bus at all anymore?
No, I did the one on the 24th. So I did Christmas Eve on the Trumpington Park and Ride. That was my last shift that I did. And I must admit, I loved it. It was great. Seeing customers, they were all jolly because it was Christmas Eve, fist pumping all kids as they're getting off, saying, "I hope you've been good," all that sort of stuff. Yeah, it was good fun.
I'm just going to interrupt with something I've just noticed that since joining the Greens, Stephen's got a halo.
Yes.
Sorry.
It's the Zach Kalansky effect. Being a bus driver, this question here then, single ticket pricing holds up the bus because people are mucking around trying to pay.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is. Dwell time is really, really, really important. In fact, so we're pushing for different tech on our buses in terms of ticket machines, and we're owned by a company called DWS, right? And our chief executive, Claire, she's brilliant. She's getting a bit racked off with DWS in terms of having to put the business case forward to ticket machines and all that. Because, when you've got 8,000 vehicles, the bill's 45 million, right? It's a big cost, right? So all the MDs had to do a video on why we need to change our ticket machine solution. And to be fair, there's a guy called Andy Heathcote who's a driver at Cambridge, and when I were in Drummer Street fairly recently, and we were talking to all the drivers, Andy were giving me some right stick about the ticket machines and how they're slow, how the cutters don't work, which means then the customer takes the ticket and travels all the way down the bus with a mile-long piece of paper, all that sort of stuff. So actually, Andy and I did the video for the board. But you're quite right. Really, we need that speedy boarding because it just slows you down.
So when we last talked to you, it wasn't. I guess it was part of, we were well into the COVID recovery, but during COVID, there was this whole issue with recruiting and retaining drivers. Yeah, because lots of the drivers has gone off to drive trucks, haven't they?
Yeah, that's right.
They were getting paid more money. Is that still an issue? I know that Stagecoach has done better than many of the other operators because you've got the opportunity to train your own drivers, haven't you? You've got
we have our own drivers school.
And you were kind enough to let Alex and I reverse the bus one, which is an incredible experience and made me realise quite how difficult being a bus driver is, actually. So is that still an issue for the industry? Is it hanging on to bus drivers and training them up?
No, not really. There are certain pockets across the country that are always tend to struggle. Again, I'm not really seeing a big issue in terms of recruitment and retention of drivers. There is always a churn. Look, we generally lose drivers not because of pay or terms and conditions, but because they've got to work weekends, they've got to work early, they've got to work late. It's not just about driving the bus, it's about dealing with the customers as well, and it's not for everybody. I only last week, our longest service driver, and I'm going to name check him here, is a guy called Keith Hearn Potter, and he's just done 51 years. Jeez. 51 years driving buses in Cambridge. He's just been invited to the King's Garden party in May or something like that, you know what I mean, because of his service. Absolute brilliant guy, you know what I mean? So some people that come through the driving school, it takes them about, I would say 12 weeks from coming into the school to all the training, to going out with a mentor and all that sort of thing. So about 12 weeks before as you come in as a rookie and then you're out on your own, and it's just not for everybody.
It's really quick as well. 12 weeks is a short amount of time, isn't it?
Yeah, well, remember, they're coming in with a license. So we're having to teach them to drive. They're coming in with a license, But it is not for everybody. But no, we don't have an issue with recruitment or retention now. In fact, our turnover numbers are really good, one of the best in the country, actually. So I'm really, really pleased where we are in terms of, I think Bedford's like 10 drivers over. We're loaning them out to other depots across the country. you know. But it would be wrong for me to say that everybody sticks around and does 50 odd years, you know.
I mean, I have to say, there's a list of jobs that I couldn't do. Number one on that list is social worker, but somewhere on there is bus driver. I couldn't do it. The spatial awareness and stuff like that, I think
it would be great for me if I wasn't in politics, to be honest.
Yeah, I could be a counsellor. No. Honest, seriously, the SH1T that you guys get for the jobs that you do, and I speak to people like you every day and MPs and all that sort of thing, and I've got to take my hat off for you that your resilience is phenomenal, just to keep going through the grunt and the grind work. And I'm not blowing you up here. I am honestly, you know, you've got skin like leather.
That's a pertinent point for one of the people on this podcast at the moment. We've had a few private discussions about the treatment they're getting. So absolutely agree with you. Not that I do it anymore.
There's a comment here from Robert, who was obviously recently restarted as a bus driver after 14 years away. Obviously come back because of his passion for the industry, and sadly being diagnosed with a heart condition. There's also those things, right? You have to be fit and healthy to be a bus driver. So
absolutely,
bad news for Robert.
Yeah, sorry to hear that, Robert. I wish you a speedy recovery, mate.
Yeah. So one of the things that we came in, so Alex, me, and David came into the bus depot at Cambridge. Had a great day and a great day talking to you.
You've gone.
You're gone again on mute.
It's not you, Darren. It's Stephen.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's the microphone.
Are they investing in tech, this Green Party? Then is that?
Well, what Stephen is saying about this comment from Alan here, because I think that's a good question around how the funding works for, of course, concessionary bus passes. So Alan is saying here he used a couple of times his bus pass, but does the operator receive payment for each trip from the combined authority, or how does the funding work? And there was a question as well around the impact of making bus travel free for concessionary pass holders before 9:30 a.m., which was a change that the combined authority introduced last year, and what impact that kind of had on finances as well. So I think that's an interesting area.
Okay, so yeah, we obviously do get paid for concessionary travel. If you're struggling to get to sleep on a night, the legislation is very, very detailed on that. You know, it's a cracking read. But effectively, we should not benefit and we should not lose out from concessionary travel. So the money that we get from concessionary travel is lower. It's about, off the top of my head, 60% of what we would normally get from a commercial fare. Yeah. The bit about the 9:30 is really, really interesting. So the reason why that was put in is to protect operators with OAPs traveling in peak time. You know, there's a peak time on a bus when you're taking people to work, and then when you're bringing them home. And we really want to that's where you kind of make your money, taking them in and bringing them back, right? The last thing you want to do is have it full of concessionary fares that are already paying a lower fare, that are taking up the seat of somebody that would be paying a full commercial fare, you know. So that was always a challenge. I must admit, I don't know the numbers in terms of what the impact that's been on. I think I think we get some sort of compensation for anybody that travels before 9:30 type thing. But that's the reason why we don't get as much concessionary travel, and we try and make sure we push back a little bit traveling before 9:30, because we want to obviously look after those that. Now there are some OAPs that are working, so I get it. You know.
This is a very good question, and I think it's a good question to kind of wrap some of the various streams of discussion today. Is what would be your short-term pre-franchising, which is a different question because the review into franchising is still going on, so we don't really know what exactly happened with that. But what it would be your wish list from the combined authority or councils, shorter term and longer term?
Okay, so we're on to franchising, yeah? Okay, so little bit of history of me. I did 11 years in Manchester when we run commercial operation in Manchester before it went franchising. And then I did about 8-9 years in London where it is a franchised operation. So I've worked in both commercial organisations where we run the service and we take the money and we decide the network and we decide the fares. And then I've worked in London where obviously it's completely the opposite. Effectively, you are a service provider in London. You get paid so much a day to run a service. You don't care whether you carry one person or 3,000. Don't matter. You get the same one, right? My response to franchising has always been, I am not an elected official. And if elected officials want to run franchising, then I will lean in and I will try and make it work for them. Yeah. Where we are with Cambridge at the moment, as you know, I think they're doing an independent review. There's a guy called Leon Daniels who's doing an independent review on behalf of the mayor. Leon Daniels is a Jedi when it comes to running bus services. You know, I think he was managing director service transport for London for many years. He was in London when I was in London. He ran the 2012 Olympics in London, which was a great success. So this guy's Jedi level when it comes to running bus services. And I would think what he's doing is trying to say to the mayor, right, okay, these are your options for franchising Cambridge and Peterborough. Because, look, Cambridge and Peterborough is not London and it's not Manchester. Manchester is 3.5 million people running about 150 million passenger journeys every year. London, God, here's a story for you, right? So, here, pop quiz. First went to London, got my first set of accounts. What was the driver's pay bill for 4 weeks in London, just for Stagecoach London, just for the drivers? So, 1 4-week block of the driver's pay bill in London just for Stagecoach. Give me a number.
I'm not even going to try. I have to say,
It were £12 million. £12 million for 4 weeks worth of payroll just for Stagecoach London. So the costs are like off the scale, man. You know what I mean? Unbelievable. So where we are is we're just waiting for Leon's report. And then I'm sure the mayor will make a look at Leon's recommendations, and then we'll look at the options. The big challenge for the combined authority is, where does the revenue risk lie?
I get that, and I totally understand the revenue risk thing, and I do understand it. But there's another side, and I said this a few weeks ago on our podcast, that I think the thing that gets forgotten, and this is why I'm in favour of bus franchising, because it puts the local authority in charge of these decisions.
Absolutely.
And that is about value. And value is not the same as cost. And that's the thing that we need to think about buses, is by running and subsidising a bus service, you know, what is the value that we're providing? Who are the young people, for example, that we're enabling to get to work that wouldn't otherwise be able to do so from a remote village? Or or older people who aren't in a position where either they can drive or they want to drive, who are able to access, do some shopping or do whatever, or have a day out as a result of bus services existing. And that's the bit about value that we miss. And I'm going to rant a bit here, but I have a big thing about pools of employers. You know, if you're somebody or employees, if you're somebody that's looking to employ, you want the biggest pool of people to choose from that you possibly can. And having efficient public sector transport systems widens that pool that you're able to recruit from. And we forget all those things. And I certainly think that issue of value has sort of gone out of the system. There's some of it there because we obviously subsidise routes and things like that. But that's the bit for me that puts me in favour of franchising.
So, look, I get where you're coming from. Absolutely get where you're from. And you're right in terms of public transport is always seen as a cost. But some of the benefits of public transport accrue in other areas, such as health, such as mobility and all that sort of thing. The challenge that we've always got is they look at the transport budget. Now, if they were pulling money from the health and give me a bit of that social and give me a bit of that special educational needs stuff, then you may be able to put more into the pot. And then the challenge that you've got, which I you know, and it's good that we can have a mature debate about this, is the fact that where's the untapped demand then? And because sometimes, you know, as somebody that's been in this a long time, sometimes it's not a field of dreams. Build it and they will come. You know, we run village services for many years and carried nobody.
Yeah.
And that's the challenge. That's the challenge that franchising will bring to elected officials and councillors such as yourself, is when do you say no?
I agree. And the ability of a politician to say no is very different
than
the ability of a commercial organisation. Absolutely get it.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's partly about politics needing to grow up, which is something that.
Yeah, I don't know whether I told you. Yeah. So I speak to a lot of councillors, I speak to a lot of MPs, I speak a lot to mayors, and I give you a conversation. I may have shared with this before, but I'll share it with you again because it's a true story, right? So it wasn't this area, but I was speaking to a mayor, and we were talking about funding for bus services in a rural setting, right? And he says, Darren, he said, I have a 16-year-old individual that needs care 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 2 nurses. It costs me £16,000 a week for the care for that individual. That's one of 274 under 16s that need that funding. So when you come talking about, can I run an extra service on a Sunday, or can I put a night service out, or can I do turn a 1 hour service into a 2 hour service? And running buses is expensive. One bus is about 200 grand just for one bus, the operating costs. So when you're coming down and asking for me that money, and I'm looking at this 274 times 16 grand a week, I've got to, and you guys know that, don't you? Because that's what you guys do all the time, you know. And sometimes some of the listeners on this call and some of the public don't really understand the challenges that you've got in balancing a budget.
Yeah, and the point you made about not being able to pull money from one service to another, I think is important as well. You know, when you think that, a lot of our services, if you get prevention right, in social care is a great example. If you get preventative services right in social care, it's the NHS you're saving money as much as it is yourself. But there's no pullback from that, and it's those things that that's part of the reason why I would be in favour of regional government as well, because you could enable some of that.
So when Alex, David, and I came to visit the bus depot, you challenged us about some of the things, because you've been very kind coming on here today, as always, and answering all the questions that are thrown at you. You never shirk any questions, which is what I love about you, Darren. But also, you had some challenges for us. One of those was, at the time, the busway was still shut, and that was having a severe impact on your ability. And now it's open. It's not perfectly open, but it's moved, not because of anything we've done, but that's naturally. The other thing was about kind of communications between roadworks and infrastructure work in Cambridge, and making sure, is that situation improved at all?
No. So that's one of our biggest challenges. And under franchising, that's one of the biggest things the mayor's got to try and get all of his highways.
Yeah.
He has got to control the highways, because controlling highways, you control the buses.
Can I ask a specific local question about that then? I mean, obviously in Whittlesea, we have got the dreaded Kingsdyke crossing, which obviously means we've got, we've got traffic lights permanently on that route, supposedly until the end of February, but I'm not holding my breath. What impact does that have on you guys? Something like that, when traffic should be free flowing, and you've got something like that permanently in place.
Can you still hear me? Is that okay?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Okay. So, if it's pre-planned and we know about it, we can try and mitigate the impact of it. Yeah, we can try and mitigate the impact of those changes. What happens is sometimes it's just dropped on us, and I get sometimes when you've got emergency works and things like that. But the key is all about pre-planning that work, pre-planning it, and maybe it doesn't necessarily mean you can close the road for all vehicles. Why can't you keep it just open for buses? You know, so it's about having those conversations with the highways department, about, right, okay, what can we do to mitigate the damage on the customer, mitigate the damage on the service? But highways is the big thing. It's traffic enforcement. You know, I had, about 3 or 4 months ago, we had a driver couldn't get round a church because there's a car inappropriately parked, and it was at a funeral. So what does the driver do? Does he wait? Does he go knock on the door of the funeral and say, "Can the owner of AE21 move your car, please?" You know, and there's those issues that are happening on the service every day. So traffic enforcement, working closely with the highways, you know, and I have to give Paul Bristow, some real credit here. We had a big issue on Hills Road where they were going to close the road at the Cathedral Junction in Cambridge, and it was going to cause absolute heartache. You know, I got hold of Paul. Paul worked his magic with a key stakeholder at this utility company. I won't name the guilty. You know, and you know, within 48 hours, we got a senior ops director sat in a meeting for us. Yeah, and we were able to talk. We could mitigate the damage, mitigate the impact, and it worked. But highways is the key. If you're going to go franchising, you've got to try and get a control of them highways.
Okay. Got another question come up here, so I'm going to throw it up because I think it's a valid one. I think the Tiger services are that's the wrong one. Let's hide that, shall we, and put the other one up. That's the one. Thank you. Yeah.
So what's the average cost of running a Tiger service? How much is a Tiger service? Look, at the end of the day, those are on gross cost. So effectively, we put in a bid like everybody else does. What's your daily rate of running a bus? And it doesn't matter to us whether it carries one person or 500. We get paid the same rate.
I'll put this one on, which is a very broad but very relevant question.
Oh, God. Wow.
I have different views depending on which layer of council. And
that's all going to change soon.
Yet about, I mean, one of the things around, like your comments around highways, obviously we have local government reorganization and we have only one layer of council authority. Probably highways will still be under a new unitary, which might bring different opportunities as to new councils, perhaps reviewing some of the highways contracts or other, you know, maybe the lane rental schemes or other things that are proposed. Yeah. So it might be like might look quite different in 2027 or 2028 when the new councils will come in. But this question, how do you feel the CPCA and other councils actually engage with bus operators?
Look, so we have a bus operators forum where we meet regularly with the combined authority, and they do bring people from the highways down and people from county and things like that. You know, look, I've always been open and honest. Yeah, there's just not enough people in the combined authority in the bus department. I think there's 2 or 3 that look after it. There's a guy called Andrew Highfield who runs it, and he does a cracking job. But there's just not enough people in there to try and resource what they want to do. You know, so that's a frustration of ours. You know, I guess on the broader piece, you know, the people are great. Don't have an issue with the individuals at all. I could do with more of them because then we could get stuff done and we could get stuff done quicker. You know, I came to East from London in 2018, something like that, just before COVID. Franchising were all the rage, and we just got it signed off February 2025. Yeah, 6 years. Granted, we went through COVID. Of really thinking, right, what am I going to do with the business? Where are we going? How am I going to get investment? Because I go to my board and I say, right, can I do this? Can I do that? I want to expand the network. I want to go over there. And quite rightly, they turn around to me and say, right then, Darren, we might not run it in 2 years, 3 years. Why would we invest in a network when somebody's effectively said we're going to run it? So certainly the speed of those decisions, we've had to sit on our hands and make network decisions that if we were in a commercial environment or in a different environment with enhanced partnerships and all those sorts of things, we could move faster at getting stuff done. At the end of the day, like I said, I'm not an elected official. That's the mayor wanted both. The mayor's wanted franchising. I'll lean into him, but God, it's come at a cost of network development and the speed at getting some stuff done.
So the speed thing is a huge issue across the public sector anyway. I think I think we've discussed that before. But in terms of this planning thing, how much time do you spend looking at? Because obviously Cambridgeshire is a growth county. How much time do you spend sort of looking at areas of growth and looking for opportunities for yourselves?
I'll be honest with you, not a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say that's my experience because a few years ago, I put in a bid, totally when I was working for another company, totally off my own back without any liaison with the company, and it was about using the expertise I've got, not in the East, by the way, I have to say, in a different district, using the expertise that I've got in community consultation and stuff like that, to start looking for opportunities in some of these areas of growth. And apart from him saying, well, we don't mind doing this as long as we don't tread on a monopoly operator's business, which really upset me. But when it got down to detail, they weren't really interested in doing the research.
No, but the issue is commercial risk, right? To run one bus, 200,000, right? If we come up with a bus service, right? If it was in a different environment, yes, we were going out. So I operate in other areas that are not Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. Yeah, I'd be doing, we have done. We'd be doing, like I said, we'd be using mobility data. Where are people travelling when we're not putting a service? Yeah, and I'm a big visual guy, so in my office I have massive maps of where we serve, and I want to see every hospital, every school, everything. We put them on with dots, and then we try and join them all up, and we track the mobility data. We use other companies that come in and mosaics and market research and all that sort of stuff. But in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, why would I go out and do all that work, when there's a commercial risk? And bearing in mind, bus, you're burning diesel, you're burning labour from day one. It could take 2 or 3 years to build a bus service up, and you've got to have deep pockets and long arms. And this is one of the things that certainly with the combined authority we spoke about is be careful about a new network when you're looking at franchising. I
understand that, Darren. What I would say is the pushback I would give is if you invested in that stuff, it would give you intelligence and knowledge that no other bus operator who's bidding on those franchise routes would have.
But if the franchising, the combined authority is going to give us all that data, and we just pay a fee. We just bid to run that.
But you're going to have the knowledge to know exactly what level to bid at.
No, but they'll give us a timetable. They'll say, "There's the route. This is what they do in London. There's the route. That's the frequency. 10 operators. Give me a best value." So we'll have a time. We'll have a team. They'll go and have a look at it, and right, we think we need about 10 buses for that. So we'll put a bid in to run it for 10 buses.
But I still go back to the, and when franchising starts, I still think you will have an advantage over other operators because you've got the intelligence and the knowledge that comes from having run the services for decades.
Yeah, we'll know every tight left-hand turn. We'll know every pothole. We'll know every long-hanging tree.
If you know every pothole, congratulations.
I tell you what. When I did that bloody Trumpington Road, what a mess that is going up out of the city up towards the park and rider back. It's awful. Anyway, that's another story.
I hope there's no media watching this.
Yeah. No, but you're right in what you're saying. But at the end of the day, when somebody's telling you what level of service they want, how the frequency, when the first bus is, when the last bus is, we're not really interested in population densities or anything like that. And what, you know, we'd road test it, we'd take a bus out there at peak time and we'd time trial it and all that sort of stuff, you know. But in terms of whether it's going to carry one person or 1,000, to be quite honest, to be blunt, not bothered. I still get me whatever it is £1 a day that I'm going to get paid.
I'll end the controversial question. Should Peterborough have parking
This is good stuff,
and free parking?
Oh, right. Okay. 2 questions there. Should have a park and ride. Yeah, I think park and rides are really, really good. You know, not all of them are, not all of them work to the best of the ability in Cambridge. I think that would be fair to say. You've got the Trumpington that smashes it every day, but then maybe you've got the Milton, in hindsight, maybe a bit too close to the city, you know, but lessons learned. Should Peterborough have one? Yeah, it depends where you put it. Depends where you put it. Remember, the key for bus operators is the need for travel.
Mm-hmm.
So if the need's there and the demand's there, then obviously put a park and ride in. You know, as regards to free parking, a little bit concerned about that one, because we have some experiences where you put free parking in and the first thing that dips is bus travel. So what happens is, you know, and I've seen this in an area that I worked, and we've got the evidence and the data to prove it. Free parking went in, bus demand went down like that, and then all of a sudden I'm turning around and I'm saying these routes are no longer commercially viable because of the impact of free parking. You know?
I can totally see how that happened, especially in town centers. So like often, obviously, like living a bit outside Huntington, I would take the bus into Huntington, into the town center. But if you had completely free parking, you'd be very tempted to drive all the time. I can see that kind of like behavior shift, especially for short journeys.
I agree. I also think park and rides have so much potential to free up town centres so that you can, and city centres so you can do more. And I think some of them. So if you did one, I obviously don't know the economics of it, but from the Whittlesea perspective, we have people driving into Whittlesea that use the free parking so that they can catch the bus into work, and it clogs up our car parks. And so do something outside of the town that provided a park and ride. Not only would it provide a great facility, but it would also potentially free up our town centre. I obviously don't know the economics around that. I've just got just this going around in my head.
The economics are fairly simple, right?
Yeah.
It's a number of, it's like electric vehicles, electric buses. Everybody raves about, we want electric buses. Electric buses is an investment in air quality. It's not an investment in the passenger.
Mm-hmm.
So let me explain that, right? If you've got an air quality issue, you've got your electric vehicles definitely. But if your bus is still travelling, your £500,000 bus is still travelling at 10 miles an hour into the city, So what you need to do is you need bus priorities. We need access at lights. We need anything to get us into the city quickly, because the more people, if you're getting quickly, more people will use it. And the evidence is clear. If you can speed up buses, right, costs go down, revenue and passengers go up, which means then you've got more opportunity to run it more efficiently because you don't need as many buses, and you can keep your fares lower, So it's a basket of stuff when you're looking at park and ride. It's not just the park and ride, it's the other stuff, that goes with it.
Can we just ask a question from Anthony? Do you know about this City 3 service being extended from Tesco's at Fulbourn to the ice rink? Can you ask
Look, that's a commercial. I need David on to help me with that sort of stuff. If somebody wants to drop me a line or drop me an email or something like that, I'll get David to have a look at it.
Yeah, maybe next time we can get David on as well, because he's also
David's good. Yeah, David's always good for
us. So I think
City 3 is the route I used to use almost every day when I used to live in Cambridge. So I'm familiar.
You're going to endorse that, are you, Alex, as well? We'll pin David next time.
It'd be interesting to see, what the use would be like. Obviously, seeing it, I think obviously it would be a good idea. But I think we need David to answer that question.
Yeah.
So we've been going for nearly an hour and 15 minutes, so I think it's probably time to give Darren a rest. It's been fantastic. The amount of engagement has really been great from people. But everyone has enjoyed it. So Darren says this is boring and economistic. And also he says is Stephen ready to fall asleep? So
No, we had
a long week.
Darren had a long day.
It's finished on a high, right?
Exactly. So Darren, I just want to say thank you again for coming on and honestly answering
anytime
every single question that's been thrown at you. We really appreciate it. You really stand up for buses. This podcast is completely in favour of buses as well. So I think we share your joy and passion for buses, and it's lovely to have so much engagement. So
look, I really do appreciate it. Anything I can do to help, you're always good fun when we come on as well. So I enjoy this sort of stuff.
I mean, it's a combination of fun, and I hope you appreciate the challenge as well. Because it's worth saying thanks to everybody that's come on and submitted questions or spent the time listening to us.
There's not many other people from commercial companies who will come on and answer any question they're thrown at them. So we do really appreciate it. Disappointed about the Yorkshire tea thing, but we'll let that slip. And, right.
Lovely. Great to see you all.
Thank you very much, everyone. And we'll see you next week at 6:30. Maybe you can talk about my defection then or something as well. So, yeah. All right.
Yes,
it's all about me, really.
Always.
Right. See you later.
Yeah,
bye, everyone.
Bye. That was cracking.
It was cracking. We were also not right. Yeah, I'm going to do the end stream because David put that bloody thing on, didn't he? Oh, it's ended. Is it end?